Right, got the start of new month and a new project. So this will be a 3-week project. We've got, so we're looking at fruit and vegetables, but having a look at maybe cutting sections through them. So we've not specifically had a go at this before, I don't think. So I thought, so it's quite, I think that was a suggestion from somebody in the group, and I thought it was quite a nice suggestion. So that's that. So I'm not running a session next week, so this will be the first session. Break next week, and then a couple more weeks. Then I think after in December we'll have about 3 weeks till Christmas time. Yeah, so we'll have about 3 weeks then. After in December, not including November. So we've got a while yet, so don't worry. I brought this book in, which is quite a nice little book. I've shown you this many times before. She does quite a lot of still life, and she works on quite a small scale. And I kind of thought there'd be lots of examples of still lives with fruit cut in sections, because that's kind of how I think of her work. But I couldn't actually find one in this book, so maybe it was on the internet too. But something like that. It's tiny in this, but that's quite an interesting one of an apple, kind of cut in half, then cut in half again, and then the other half. So that would be, and also combined with other elements. So you could combine this subject with other bits of, plates, anything else that you think is appropriate, really. And looking around, it's quite nice to see somebody who's got some good setups already. So that's that. What I would suggest though is that we perhaps do a little bit of sketching to start with before you dive into a painting. So that's always quite a nice idea. So I just did this quick sketch of this composition. And it's a good way of planning out your painting. So I was thinking, well, I'll start it in the middle, but I think, probably if I was going to do a painting, maybe I'd end it there. Perhaps a little bit too much space at the bottom. But this is, that could be enough for a compositional sketch. And it's also worth just actually planning out roughly if you can see any shadows. And as you know, unfortunately the lighting is a little bit flat in this room, but there are some quite nice deep shadows under there. A little bit under there. And that, the light and the shape of the shadows is very much part of the composition. So it's something to think about. So I don't always do this on a painting, but sometimes I do. Sometimes I'm not quite sure what I want, so I'll do a couple of sketches in my sketchbook. And that's how I felt this morning, so that would be the first one. It's also really good practice in observational drawing, drawing from direct observation rather than, relying on photographs, so just drawing from the real world. The drawings don't have to be as big as I'm drawing this one. This is just so you can see what see what I'm doing as a demo. I'll do a little bit from this one now, just as and then it could be that you might want to try different arrangements. And I heard a little bit of conversation going on earlier. So what makes a good arrangement? Get Claire to do it. We could do. Yeah. I didn't know that. Yeah. Well, that's quite nice to share that if you didn't know that. It's sort of one of those design things, and you get this idea in gardening sometimes. Just say put 3 things together or 5 things. Things look better in odd numbers. I guess an even number might look more regimented, but I wouldn't be too. I mean, the other thing is you may just want to paint one thing on its own, so that's not. So it's the idea of doing these little drawings is just try test it out. Try something with an even number, try something with an odd number on its own. Just try all sorts of variations and see what you think looks the best. It's the great thing about using still life objects is you get to design your own painting. You're not just selecting a view, you're actually staging it. You're staging the view. And there's quite a skill in that, and it's worth exploring. And one way of learning how to sort of get better at that is basically look at lots of paintings and just see how artists have composed the paintings. Just kind of analyse what they've done. Okay, so if I was going to go do a little quick one of these. In terms of the drawing skills, I mean, what I quite like about this, unfortunately it's gone a bit brown already, but they're sort of tilted at slightly different angles. So it's a repeated shape, so you've got that kind of repeated rhythm. They're actually the same size, whereas the previous still life, that was a bit bigger and you had some slightly smaller elements. And that's something you can think about, is scale. Maybe having a bigger object and then a couple of smaller bits. And it's sort of how that balances out. In terms of drawing this, just the general kind of drawing skills, I'm thinking the middle of this part of the quince, I think it's called, is about that angle. So sometimes just sketching out lightly or use a light colour pencil can be a good idea. So I'm just trying to get a sense of the shapes to start with and how they relate to each other. And then this other one, the middle of that one, is kind of going down at that sort of angle. So that would be the middle. And then it's easier then for me to try and get a shape from that. Because obviously you've got quite a lot of foreshortening and different angles and things. So I think that would give me, the basic kind of setup. And then if I'm happy with that, I can then refine the shapes. Kind of come around here. That's a little bit wider here. Let's do a little bit in the middle as well. I quite like to, if I can, work inside out. I know some of these fruit and veg have got like seeds and pips, and it's very tempting to just do lots of seeds. So I'll just do the same cloned shape. So if you can, I mean, you might want to simplify it a little bit, but if you can, try and sort of, try and focus in on the actual shapes you can see there. So that one's got a pip cut in half, and then there's a couple of very smaller pips here cut in half. And it's just a matter of just slowing down and taking my time and just focusing on what I can actually see there. And there's a little tiny one there. Sometimes getting those middle bits in first, and then I can work my way out to the edge, and then maybe down to here. That starts about there with the flesh. And then there's about that much. In terms of drawing curved shapes, that's another thing to look at when you've got an irregular shape. One thing that can be useful is sort of like constructing the shape with almost like a series of straight lines, and then you could just round the corners where you need to round the corners, because what you'll find with some of these fruit is that there'll be slightly flatter bits and slightly rounder bits, and it's very easy to just generalise and just make it all a regular shape. So it is trying to just get yourself to really key into what's in front of you. Would that be enough? Yeah, to go. Does anybody want to ask anything?
When's tea?
I think I'll make it a bit later today. Depends how good the paintings are. Okay, let's crack on. If anybody wants to use any of these, there's also, I've got some of the kitchen knives out in the kitchen and a couple of chopping boards, so that's a good place. And you're welcome to chop any of this up if you want to. You're welcome to use any of these too.